Well, welcome back, everyone. This is your host, ID Jester. For all my advanced squad leader friends out there, we are going to cover some more of the rules in about 15 minutes. We are continuing part 12 and probably will for quite a few episodes because fire attacks are so involved and so in depth and so important. I'm going to cover them step by step. And like I had mentioned previously in this video series, I'm going to introduce a few of the rules and we're going to expand on those as we continue. So just bear that in mind when I'm talking about fire attacks. I'm not talking specifically about anything right now, but more of along the lines of a general overview of a basic fire attack. Let's look at and expand from what we had learned in our last episode and find out what exactly all this means. Well, if we look at this unit in N5, it has a firepower value of 6, it has a range of 6, and it has a morale of 6. If this unit was to attack this German unit in N4, he has a firepower 6, which is going to be doubled because he is shooting adjacent. So he would be attacking with 12 firepower. If he was going to shoot this unit in K3, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 hexes away. It's within his normal range, so he gets his full firepower of 6. If he was going to shoot this unit in H3, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is exactly as far away as his normal range, so again, he continues using his full firepower. If he decides to shoot at this unit in F4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it is longer than his normal range, but it's not greater than double his normal range. So in that case, this unit is going to have half firepower, or in this case, for this unit specifically, it will have a firepower of 3. This unit could not shoot at a unit that was 13 hexes away because that is greater than double his normal range. So that's pretty much as simple as it gets. You're going to figure out your firepower value and you're going to double and half it because of many different factors. If this unit was pinned, it would be half firepower. If you're shooting during the advanced fire phase, it's going to be half firepower. So there's many things that are going to adjust your firepower value. Now with that said, there are also many things that are going to adjust your die roll modifier. And I should mention that those two things are separate and never cross one another. If I have a +3 die roll modifier, that's not going to adjust my firepower value. That's going to adjust the numbers that I roll on 2d6. So if I have +3 die roll modifier and I roll a 7 on 2d6, my total is going to be a 10. But that number is not going to adjust my firepower value. What it will adjust is possibly what the result is on the attack. So let's look at how we do attack, and we're going to bring up what we call the IFT, or the Infantry Fire Table. You can see here there are columns and there are rows. The columns in the pink here are going to give you your firepower total, and we have columns for 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 30, and 36. Our rows are going to be what we roll our die roll on, and then we're going to adjust positively or negatively based on our die roll modifiers. And you can see it has less than or equal to 0, goes all the way up to greater than or equal to 15. All we're going to do is cross-reference our final die roll after our modifiers with the column that our firepower attack is, and that'll give us our result. So let's take a quick example and see how this works out. This unit in N5 is going to shoot at the unit in N4. We can see by our phase disc here, that's the American's prep fire turn. So he can choose to prep fire any of his units. He decides to prep fire at this unit adjacently. So his 6 firepower goes up to 12 firepower, and we're just going to assume that there are no die roll modifiers. At this point, what I want to explain and talk to you about is almost every attack that you do in ASL, there's normally going to be die roll modifiers because of terrain, because of the hex the unit is in that you're attacking. Maybe they're moving in the open. Maybe you have a leader that is adjusting your attack. So almost always you're going to have die roll modifiers. What I'm going to do is introduce a few of them at a time, and that way we're not all swamped with trying to figure out exactly what the different die roll modifiers are for each attack. The one I'm going to introduce in this episode is just your leader die roll modifier. So if we put this leader here, it's a 9 minus 1. The minus 1 is actually a die roll modifier. Again, this is not going to adjust our firepower total. We have 6 firepower on this unit. We are shooting adjacently, so he's going to be up to 12 firepower. So the 12 firepower isn't going to be adjusted because of the leader in any way. The only thing the leader is going to do is adjust the row that we're on by subtracting 1 to our dice roll total. So let's go ahead and do an attack now and see how this American player ends up doing for his turn. He rolls a 6 and a 5. We combine these together for 11. We subtract our die roll modifier minus 1, and we end up with 10 on the 12 column. So all we have to do is look at the 10 total, and we cross-reference that on the 12 column, and we get a PTC, which is a pin task check. You can also see we have NMCs, again, which are normal morale checks. We have 1 MCs, which are 1 morale checks, 2 morale checks. We have K/number. We have a number and then a KIA. And I'm going to go more in depth into the results on the IFT in the next episode. We just don't have enough time to include that in this episode. But if we look at our total of 10 on the 12 column, all enemy units in that location that we fired at are going to take a pin task check. Let's assume that these units here in M6 are going to fire at the units in K3. Well, let's look at these units and see what we have. We have 2 5, 4, 6s, so we have firepower of 5. We have range of 4. We count the number of spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're both within normal range. So we're going to add these firepowers together. We're going to get a total of 5 plus 5 is 10. We have 10 firepower. Let's look at our infantry fire table again. We can see there is no 10, so we can only go to the column that is equal to or less than our total. And in this case, we would drop down to the A column. And we're going to roll 2d6 and apply any modifiers. Again, I'm not going to specifically talk about all the different modifiers for shooting through the crops. Let's see what, oops, wrong button, sorry. Wrong button again. There we go. Yeah, we're not going to talk about specifically about the different crops. I'm going to do a whole video series on the different terrain types, and we're going to eventually get to them. But right now I'm not willing to introduce all the different modifiers that can come into attack. So we're just going to assume that the terrain at this point is just open and clear, just to keep things a little simpler so we understand the basic concepts of what we're trying to learn, and that's fire attacks. So we got 10 firepower. And we're shooting at this unit. Again, both of these units are in normal range. And we're going to go ahead and do an attack. So he's on the 10 column. Well, there is no 10 column, so he's going to drop to the 8 column. And we're going to roll 2d6. In this case, we roll a 6 and a 6. Well, this brings up another really good point, and I wasn't going to introduce this yet, but since I rolled a 6 and a 6, I will introduce it. And basically, what this represents is anytime you roll the same number on both dice, whether it's a 1, a 2, 1, 1, a 2, 2, a 3, 3, a 4, 4, a 5, 5, or a 6, 6, your units are going to cower unless they are immune to cowering or they have a leader in their hex. These units here have cowered because they rolled a 6 and a 6, which is a 12, so they're going to drop down 1 column on the IFT. This unit here, if he was to roll a 3-3, a 4-4, a 5-5, a 6-6, or whatever, is immune to that because he is with the leader. And you should watch our conscript in green video we did a few episodes ago where we talked about the different differences between conscripts and greens as opposed to all the other first and second line and elite units out there. And we talked about what happens if they cower and that they drop 2 columns down on the IFT. So let's look at our total result here. We rolled a 6 on the 8 column, so we're going to cross-reference a 12 on the 8 column, and we can see that there's blank. A blank basically means there's no result from that attack. But don't forget, we also lose a column because we cowered, so we're going to drop down to the 6th column. Let's just say, for example, we rolled a 3 and a 3 instead of a 6 and a 6. A 3 and a 3 would be 6 total. If we look at the 6 total on the 8 column, we would get a 1 morale check. But remember, we drop a column because we cowered. In this case, we would go down the 6 column. And of course, we end up with another 1 MC. Fortunately for the American player, it didn't matter that he cowered because he still got the same result. But that's how cowering comes into play. So we did add that rule in. I wasn't planning on doing it, but because the dice sometimes work against me, and sometimes they work for me here when I'm trying to do these video series, sometimes it might make a difference in what we actually talk about. Let's assume the American player, instead of doing this attack, though, let's try something a little different. Instead of doing that last attack, we'll just assume the American player chose to attack this unit in H3 as opposed to instead of K3. So we would count the hexes. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can see clearly that that is outside our normal range of both of these units. So the first unit there is going to get half firepower, so it's going to be 2.5. And the second unit is also going to have 2.5. Remember, we don't lose any halves or quarters or A's or, well, 16, 17ths. We don't ever get rid of all those numbers. And so we end up with 2.5 firepower, and we would add another 2.5 firepower. So we end up with the 5 firepower. And again, I'm just going to kind of ignore all the terrain in between. We're not going to worry about that right now. Eventually, we'll get to add more and more into that as we go through this series. But just for you advanced squad leader players that are more familiar with the rules, just kind of ignore, make it just so that everything is just clear terrain there. And even though he is in a building hex, we're going to kind of disregard that right now too. We're just going to assume the whole board is just clear terrain, just so we can focus on the rule that we're trying to learn here. Again, we were at 2.5 plus 2.5. We're at 5 firepower. 5 firepower, well, there is no 5, so we're going to drop down the 4 column, and we're going to roll 2d6. Let's see if the computer can do any better for me. Well, the computer rolled a 5 and a 5. Again, what ended up happening is these units cower. Remember, when we roll doubles, we are going to cower. So again, the computer did a good job of rolling doubles for me so we can really emphasize this rule. So if we look at our IFT, we are on the 4 column. We rolled a total of 10, which is going to be this result. And of course, we lose a column and we drop down because we had cowered. Again, we still have no result. So it didn't matter that the American unit cowers because he still wouldn't have attacked, even with his normal value. Lastly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's assume this unit in M7 is going to attack this unit in F4. We can see he has a range of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, right outside his normal range, so he's going to be half firepower. Again, 6. Half of 6 is 3 firepower. 3 firepower. Again, we're going to just assume it's normal terrain. We're going to ignore it. Everything is just clear hexes here. It's just a big open field with nothing in it. Eventually, we'll get to add more of these as we go. But 3 firepower. We're going to roll 2d6. He rolls a 1 and a 3. Much better attack. So he rolls a total of 4. And we're going to check that. He was 3 firepower. 3 firepower. We have to drop down to the 2 column. And he rolls a 4. So he ends up getting a 1 morale check against that enemy unit. So he's going to take a morale check and he's going to add 1 to the dice roll. So a pretty good result considering how far away he was and how much firepower he was attacking with. Again, your leaders, the 2 things that they're going to supply for you. Number 1, if they have any modifier, leadership die roll modifier, they are going to subtract that value to whatever attack they are assisting with. Remember from our last episode, leaders can only assist in 1 attack, and this of course we're talking about rate of fire and such, and that's going to be support weapons, which we haven't got into quite yet, but eventually we will get into that. The other thing the leader is going to help you prevent is any of those units that are going to cower because of their rolling doubles when they roll their attack. The last thing I want to touch on before we end this episode, and I know we're already running out of time, is I'm just going to spread these units out so we can look at them here. you can easily see that 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, these are the firepower table columns. If you can get your units to bump up and be on the next column over, that gives you that much better chance of doing some kind of damage. As you can see, the numbers progress downwards, or the rows actually progress downwards, the higher the column is. So a 10 on the 4 column does nothing for you, but a 10 on the 12 column does at least a pin task check for you. And of course, a 10 on the 20 column does a 1 morale check for you. So even though you roll a 10, which is not a very good roll, depending on which column you're on, can have totally different results. If we were the American player and we were combining units together, let's just say, for example, we combine this stack of units together and this stack of units together, you can see that we have 11 firepower in this hex and 11 firepower in this hex over here. We have 6 and 5, we have 6 and 5. That's 11 firepower. That's pretty good. The problem is that 11 firepower is just a little short of 12. And that's not going to get the American player anything, because it's going to drop back all the way down to the 8 column. All we have to do is rearrange these units quickly and easily when we're moving around the battlefield, and you can see that all of a sudden we have one stack here that has a 12, and the next stack has a 10. So if we look at our IFT table again, you can see a 12 is all of a sudden on the next column, as opposed to the 10, which drops down to the 8 column. So just by repositioning these 2 units on the battle board, I was able to get one of our attacks to move up to the next column, and that again is going to give me that much greater chance of being able to damage enemy units. Last example, quite quickly, I want to show you, and I've already forgot to readjust this scenario here. If we look at this X1, you can see we have a 337 half squad and a 126 half squad, and they're going to shoot at this unit in U1. Well, the 337 is within normal range because it's 3 spaces away, so he's going to supply his 3 firepower attack. And then we have a 126 who only has a range of 2, so that's going to be shooting at long range, so he's going to supply half of his firepower, and so that's going to give us a half of firepower. So we're going to end up having a 3.5 attack. If we look back at our IFT table, a 3.5 attack is absolutely nothing. It's going to fall all the way back to the 2 table. There is no 3.5. So we're going to fall all the way back to the 2 column. So in fact, this unit being in that hex does absolutely nothing for the 337. If he wasn't even in that hex, we would still be shooting at the 2 column. So what I would recommend the American player do is try to get that firepower up if at all possible, and you can quickly see that I've already done that by having a unit adjacent. And if I was to put all those 3 units together, you can see that we would be shooting at 3 firepower. We'd get a half of firepower from the first half squad, and a half of firepower from the second squad. We get 3 plus a half, and of course that is 4, and we would be on the 4 column. So you want to think about these things when you're positioning your units, when you're moving around. You want to try to get those combinations together that are going to get you on the next column, or at least try to keep those units together that are give you good numbers. 6, 8s, 12s, 16s. These are all the mid-range numbers. If you can get these mid-range numbers to always be together. If you got 2 4s, put them together. Of course, you're going to have 8. You get the 2 6s together, you get the 12. You get the 2 8s together, you get the 16s. The problem is, whenever the enemy shoots at you, those stacks of units that are together are going to have to take morale checks or whatever the results are. So there is a deficit when you try to get these firepowers together. But what I would try to do is just there's no sense in running around with a bunch of squads that have 10 firepower or 11 firepower. I'd much rather have one squad that's running around at 12 firepower and the rest of them running around with 8. Well, I hope this kind of covers what we're talking about when we're doing our basic attacks. We're trying to just figure out what our total firepower is. We're going to half or double that based on different situations. And then, of course, totally separate from that, we're going to have our die roll modifiers. And like I said, we're going to eventually introduce more and more of the terrain type modifiers in. But right now, I just think that's too much when we're trying to focus in on our actual firepower rules. The one thing we did add, of course, is our leader Leaders are going to give any kind of die roll modifier either positively or negatively. And the other thing it does, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to prevent you from cowering and losing a firepower attack by lowering columns. And we certainly don't want that to happen. We want to keep our attacks on the highest column we possibly can that's most advantageous for our units. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me, and I want to thank everyone for leaving all your thoughts and comments and suggestions. I've had a lot of positive feedback. It's really great to hear this stuff, and I continue doing that because I get very anxious about these different videos, wondering if it's worth the time, the trouble, and the effort spending a lot of time trying to make these episodes and uploading them, and trying to spend all the time creating them, and trying to come up with different scenarios and different situations to talk about. And it's nice to hear once in a while that players are out there, they are continuing to watch these videos, and that they are making a difference out there, that people are learning some stuff for. So if you are learning some stuff for me, please do let me know, so I know that I am doing something that is positive and trying to make a difference. So thanks for watching, and I do appreciate it. And we'll see you in the next episode where we continue talking about fire attacks.